So the summer break is almost over. How do you feel about going back to school? Are you excited? Are you nervous? Or are you dreading it?
Hello and welcome back to another Chalk Face with myself, Craig, and my colleague Dave. If you're a returning viewer or listener on our podcast, thank you for tuning in again. And if this is the first time, you may not know who we are. Well, we're both ex-teachers of computer science in the county of Gloucestershire, over 40 years experience between us. And now we run a company, craiganddave.org, providing everything you need to resource your computer science department and get your kids that success we all desperately want them to achieve. And once a week, we waffle on here about a topic of our choosing. Sometimes we have guest speakers on, but today it's just me and Dave. And, well, what are we going to talk about today, Dave? Normally I intro it and I throw you to a question, but I'm just going back to you, because if you are listening to this as it's come out, it's still your summer holiday. So what's our topic of discussion today?
Yeah, it's only just the summer holiday, and teachers, of course, will be thinking about the return to school. And I'm interested in how you used to feel about this time of the year. So you've had a few weeks off. You've had a lighter timetable probably in the summer term with your gained time. So you've eased down. You've had a bit of a relaxing break. The A-level results have come in. And for us, that was typically pretty good news, a few ups and downs, but pretty positive. And then a week later, you got the GCSE results. And again, pretty positive most of the time for us. A few ups and downs, few unexpected results, both up and down. But by and large, pretty buoyant. Everything seemed to be okay. And then you look at the calendar and you think, oh, it took ages for July to turn into August. And now I only have a week to go before I'm actually back at school. Where did that 6 week, or sometimes longer if you're in a different school, break go? Because the terms don't seem to go that quickly, but the holidays certainly do. So how did you feel at this time of the year, knowing you were going back to school in about a week's time?
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you now, at the date of recording this, we're on the 18th of August. Already by this point, I'd be starting to feel, I hate to say it, I'd be starting to feel anxious. Yeah, honestly. And it didn't matter how far through my career I got. I mean, I've talked very openly and honestly, Dave, before about sort of some of the things that drove me out of the profession, the anxiety, and unfortunately far too common a story. This wasn't really that type of thing, but I return always thinking, oh, have I forgotten how to teach? And definitely by this point, especially the last week, I wouldn't be relaxing in that last week. I mean, it's one of the reasons if you're going to go away, I'd take a nice fortnight off and do it straight away. And the closer we got to returning to school, the more anxious I'd get about, what's my timetable, and I've got this and I've got that and I'm going to do this, and by now I'd be feeling anxious about the return to school, even in my last year, which for me would have been, I don't know, 16 years in the career. By that point, I was feeling anxious about the return to school. Can I remember how to do it? My imposter syndrome would come back. I hope no one catches me out. Another thing we've talked about. I mean, what about you? Because I've always seen you as so much. I mean, I think I know the answer, but I always see you as far more stable. That's fine. It's another year. Good to be back. Good to get back into it. But did you have this to the same extent, lesser extent, or not at all?
I did feel that. I did feel a genuine excitement about the new academic year. I'd spent the summer term in my gain time reflecting on my teaching, thinking about the things that I wanted to change, putting new systems and plans in place. And I was quite keen to sort of see how they would work, to get a fresh new batch of students and, start again. I quite enjoyed teaching the subject and the things that we had to teach every single year. So I didn't see it as a chore or mundane to be starting again from scratch. I quite liked it. I quite enjoyed it. So part of me was genuinely excited to get going, and particularly the inset day that you get at the beginning of the academic year. Some schools have one inset day, some have two, some don't have any. I don't know how you manage in that situation, but especially in those first two inset days where the head teacher will typically go through the results and the strategies for the year, and then various senior leaders introduce their initiatives and priorities, and you go through duty rotas and all sorts of other protocols and procedures and bits and pieces. And the new drill about making sure all the students had their shirts tucked in and their top button done up and all the rest of it. I was quite excited on those days to kind of just get going, to see my colleagues again, to talk about what we were going to do with the schemes of learning and how we were going to approach things differently, make a bigger difference this year than last year. So there was a genuine excitement there. But I'd be lying if I said it was all excitement. Just like you, every year I was also anxious. And I did have, the closer you got to that inset day, an increasing dread building up within me, which,
Dread.
like,
Good word.
I don't really, really want to go back. I mean, I think once I was in the swing of it and the inset days had landed and the first few lessons had happened, then I kind of found my mojo and my rhythm and everything was good. But in the lead up to the end of the holiday, I was always a little bit anxious. And it would manifest itself as a bit of nervousness, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And especially those first few lessons, I would feel like a newly qualified teacher again. I would feel like I had to really think about what I was doing, make sure I was well planned. I would fumble around. The first few lessons wouldn't be as slick and as elegant as I would like them to be quite often. Planning was really important, and we'll get on to that. But I just felt a nervousness about being able to do the job again. And what's really, really strange, and you've alluded to it already, is that I actually led teacher training at the University of Gloucestershire for years and years. I know how to teach. I've mentored plenty of trainee teachers. I've been a head of department and I've overseen colleagues. I have been an assistant head teacher. It's not like I don't have a lot of experience. I do. But like you, it didn't seem to matter. I still got that nervousness at the end of the holiday. And I'd like to think that on reflection, looking back, maybe it was just a good nervousness. At the time, it didn't feel like that. But looking back at it, I wonder if that nervousness meant that I cared. I wanted to do a good job, and I was nervous that maybe I wouldn't.
Yeah. It's really interesting. You used a word there that really resonated with me. You have a sense of dread, and I think that summed it up. But I mean, again, I started fairly negatively. I do apologise, everyone. And you started with the positive. I definitely had all those things as well, because like you, when I had that gain time, weirdly, I was very excited in that gain time at the end of the year. Like, oh, right, we're going to start this new IGCSE next year. Not IGCSE, it's iMedia course next year. We're going to do that. I'm going to change the way I teach A-level next year. I'm going to start working on that. And I was excited about those things. I was excited about the bit I did enjoy is having the first department meeting, which obviously you'd have on the inset day, an extended amount of time with your department. I'm sure my department members would fill it with dread. Oh, what on earth is Craig going to come up with this year? New initiative, new process. But I quite look forward to the new department meeting inset day. So right, we're gonna hit this ground running. We've got some new ideas. We're going to do this. We're in a better place we've ever been before. So I did have that same excitement. You're right, but yeah, it's quite heartwarming and reassuring to hear that you as well had exactly the same fears, and I'm sure lots of teachers will feel the same. You did touch on something else, and this is probably an area that we can talk about a bit, that you felt like a new teacher. So I mean, maybe some of you out there are watching us. I know some of you came to our conference, and you'll be starting teaching in September. You came to our conference and you're starting at your new school, and now the guide ropes are off. Yes, you're on ECT and you've got that extra maybe 10% PPA off. I think that's hopefully still a thing for ECTs. But really, that the guardrails are off. These are my classes. These are my results. I've got to make this work. And if you're feeling nervous, the first thing I'd say is that's okay, because as we've just told you, that never goes away, and everyone's probably feeling a bit nervous, so it's all right. But we could definitely probably give without becoming too patronizing, but we could probably give some pearls of wisdom and thoughts from our advice, because every teacher goes through it, and there are certainly things you can do to help. So yeah, I don't know, maybe, what do you think? Maybe that's an area we go to next, sort of like tips and hints to get off to a good start, mainly aimed at new teachers, but indeed for all you experienced teachers that go through what we feel every year, just some things to help out. What do you think?
Yeah, and I don't think any of them are rocket science. I don't
No.
think if you know, again, if you're looking for sort of a magic pill that is going to quell all your nervousness, dread, and anxiety, then we don't have that.
Sorry.
But we do have something that will relieve the itch, if you like. We have creams, not tablets.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah, we do have some quite sound advice, and I think what happens as your career develops, and you've got that curious mix of the nervousness and the dread and the excitement. But you've now got a massive dollop of experience, and that breeds complacency. And we've both admitted that we
Mm,
became complacent at various times in our career and had to give ourselves a kick up the backside. When you're an experienced teacher, it's so easy to just take things for granted, fall
yeah.
into bad habits and think, yeah, it won't be a problem. And I've seen a lot of teachers over the years that have said, oh, I don't even think about school until we get to the first day.
Yeah.
And they spend the entire term chasing their tail. They never quite get hold of their lives, it seems, and they're in a constant state of chaos as a result. And really, all they needed to do was be better prepared and not be so complacent. So, I think the advice that we've got is really intended for those in the early years of their career. But I think it does apply to teachers that are at risk of just becoming a little bit complacent as well.
Yeah. No, 100%. It's that old phrase. I can't remember which way around it goes, but something like, plan to be prepared, or otherwise prepare to fail. Something like that. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I would do that. I would see those teachers who would just walk in like, yeah, yeah, it's fine. Just going to crack on. What have you done? Yeah, I was going to go with it. But look, that's
Mm,
not me. And then you do see them chasing their tails. I'll tell you one
mm,
thing I used to do, and it's even though computer science and I love my spreadsheets and everything else, I would still maintain, and I right through my 17 years, a paper-based school diary. I don't even know if they still do them, but they'd order them in bulk at our school from consortium or some supplier, and an academic diary. And I'd get that timetable, which typically you'd have towards the end of term six, and I would just plan that out with date, typically up to the first half term, so sort of 6 weeks ahead. Or if I was feeling spicy, I'd do it up to Christmas, and a bit of a chore, but I would plan out my own calendar or diary. And whether you do it offline or online is totally up to you. But I would have a clear picture. I'd want to know, and do you know what I'd have in the front page of that calendar? I'd print off my timetable. Not the fairly shoddy black and white version that goes in your pigeonhole straight out of Sims or whatever. I'd color code it, I'd prettify it. I mean, that's me, but I'd print off my own calendar, and I'd highlight the key stage 3 and the key stage 5 different in the game time, and I'd have that inside the front of my calendar, my version of my one, with little class codes under them. I'd also do a mini version, Dave, as well, and I'd have it on the back of my lanyard. I mean, I'm not very great with remembering lists and numbers like that, and that was a strategy. At any moment in time, I could just turn my lanyard and go, yes, yes, double year 9 coming up after break. Because even during the day, I'd be like, oh God, who have I got after lunch? Even though I know I'd planned for it, but the day gets away, and you're like, oh yes, okay, double year 9, yes, and I did plan that lesson already, And when I say plan lessons, NQT, sorry, NQTs, that's showing my age, isn't it, Dave? ECTs. When I mean planning, I'm not talking about the sort of planning you were made to do during your year. No one has time to plan every lesson for 4 pages. I'd mean sketch out in my diary the points. Like, that's what I'm going to cover, and I'm going to go there. It's like the kind of aid memoir, point me in the direction. And that alone would bring, for me, the anxiety straight down, because I could have a look if I've got and go, oh yeah, no, you're right. I've got double year 9. We're starting with that. I'm doing the intro lesson. Yeah, I already prepped those and printed those off, and they're in my cupboard. That
mm.
to me, that just seemed common sense. But that was me keeping a diary, of where I'm going, the main points, keeping a copy of my timetable. I had one in my office, one at home in my office wall, one in the inside of my book, and one in the back of my lanyard. People used to take the mickey out of me because I had 4 copies, but that was me. For me, that weirdly settled me. Just knowing where I am and where I'm going at any moment and not feeling out of place.
Yeah, completely. And I think that color coded timetable is so important because if you've got, say, 4 year 10 classes, it's so
Mm,
easy to mix them up accidentally. And
yeah,
then that will cause you all sorts of chaos in the classroom when you think you're teaching one thing and then you realize, oh no, I taught that to this class last week. And we're
yeah,
in a
yeah,
mess.
yeah.
And I always used to find, because I've always worked in schools, well, most of my career, I worked in schools with a 2 week timetable,
Yeah.
and it would kind of catch
Oh
me out a
wow,
little
yeah.
bit here and there. Are we in week one? Are we in week two? And chaos. But having that color coded timetable is so important, because if you've got 4 year 10 classes, code them in different colors on your timetable. So you can say, oh, I've got the orange class now, I've got the blue class, I've got the red class. And, never mind all those fancy codes, as you say in Sims.
Yeah.
If you've got a very simple coding system that enables you to know which class is which and who you've got next, I think that just helps enormously. I mean, like you, I would map out the entire school year in my own personal system so that I
Yeah.
didn't accidentally get caught out with parents' evenings. I
Mm,
didn't accidentally get caught out with when mock exams were. So any important school dates went into my diary. And funnily enough, every single year I would order a teacher planner,
yeah.
a physical paper-based version that you were talking about a moment ago, because every year I promised myself I would do a better job of organizing what was happening when, and the paper-based method clearly couldn't let me down, and that was what I was going to do. So every year in all the schools I worked at, someone would come round in the summer term and say, do you want a paper diary next year? And we didn't have to pay for them. You would just
Yeah.
collect yours, when they arrived in the summer term, ready for the next academic year. And every year I would order one, I would pick one up, and do you know what? It would sit on my desk for the entire academic year with me not ever using it. And then
Oh
next summer
really?
I'd be like, I'll have a paper diary. And I never used them, because I just used online systems. I don't think it matters, but
Yeah.
you've got to know what your system is and stick
Yeah.
to it, so that you're not sort of like, oh, no, I wrote it down over here, but that's actually
Yes.
over there, and you end up in this chaotic situation. So
That will create your own system and then stick with it. It doesn't matter
yeah,
what it looks like, does it? I mean,
yeah,
I did use it, even though I was a huge computer nerd. Yes, I had spreadsheets and everything else, but for me, it was just something I knew where it was. Always in the same place in my classroom as well, all the time. I'd just flick it and be like, yeah, there it is.
yeah,
But whatever works for you, establish a system that you're happy with. I did that other thing you mentioned too there as well. I'd put the key dates in. Yes, there'd be a school calendar and it would be published and it would be somewhere and you could go and get it. But I mean, I'm like, I don't want to be looking for that and finding it and opening that file and blah, blah, blah. I would put that in my paper planner, the key bits that were pertinent to me. Right, then they're out there.
mm,
I've got the year 10 assessment there. I've got the first data drive here. I mean, yes, you get emailed all year about it from SLT. Don't forget, we've got a data drop deadlines here. But I'd transfer the things that were pertinent to me in there. And I'd
yeah,
probably do that actually for the entire year, just sketch those out. And then it would
yeah,
mean when I was then looking ahead and going, right, I'm just going to pop the next 6 weeks worth of lessons in and just jot down what I'm doing. I'd turn and go, we've got that this term. And then I've got that.
mm,
Okay. And I might just change it. I mean, for me, yeah, that was my personal system. It really gave me a sense of
yeah.
just comfort, control, knowing what was coming and not being, I think you said it, not being surprised, because that's the thing that would throw me the most.
Yeah, reminders.
Yeah.
If a data drop is due, for example, on October the 8th, then put that in your diary. But a week before that, put a reminder on the
Yeah.
Monday before to say data drop due next week. And then you can make sure you've got the stuff that you need in order to hit the deadlines the following week. And you're not relying entirely on the email that's going to come through, which inevitably will be too late for you to see that class again. And then,
Mm.
you're going to have to make things up and whatever. So I think the bottom line is, think to yourself, what is going to cause me stress in
Yes.
6 weeks' time if I ignore it now,
Yeah.
and put those things in place? So diaries and calendars, absolutely essential, however you organize them. I think the other thing that's really essential, Craig, is having your own personal markbook. Now, there's lots of
Mm.
school systems out there, whether you're using Sims or you're using class charts, or all sorts of systems out there that have electronic markbooks, including Smart Revise. But I think having your own version of these things, for me, gave me a lot of security. So in my pigeonhole would be all my class lists and my timetable.
Yeah.
and I would know which students to expect because they were all printed off on Sims for all my various classes. But as you've said already, it was just kind of black text on a white background with a different class code, and it'd be very easy to mix all these things up. So what I would do is I would copy all the student names off those printed sheets into an Excel spreadsheet, and I'd have a tab for every single class that I would colour to match my timetable, so there was no accidents that were going to take place. I might even colour code the title of the class name at the top, so again I couldn't really make any mistakes with which class was which. And I would copy the names down from the Sims printout into my own Excel spreadsheet. And part of that was so that I had that first kind of not just reading a mental look through the names of the students in my class, because I'm physically typing their names out. A little bit more is sort of sticking in, I suppose, but I would feel really, really comfortable having all my data in one place. So if there are school systems that mean that you have to know what the target grades are, or you have to know what the special educational needs are, or whatever, I don't want to be going to system A for this and system B for that and relying on an icon or a pop-up or whatever it happens to be. I want my own system so I can't get caught out. And for me, that was an Excel spreadsheet or workbook that had multiple sheets in it.
I was exactly the same. You're totally right, because there's always some new utopia, some new amazing whole school products, a new system that's going to solve everything. But you know what? In 17 years, I never found one that gave me the control I want. And what you end up doing, is logging into a number of different things, the school management system, and then this for that subject. And then you say, Smart Advisors have got this for there. I was exactly the same. I called it my PMB, my personal markbook, and my department used to laugh at it. And then every year they'd ask me for a blank copy of it. I'm not joking either. A personal markbook, I called it, and I did exactly what you did. It was simply one tab, one worksheet for each class, color coded. Like you, and I'd copy the class list from the start of the year out of Sims, but it meant I could do what I wanted. I could modify it however I wanted. Oh, this is a new thing. You know what? I had a column. I had a notes column in there. They're my own personal little notes for each student. Now I need to know this. I'll add a column in and I'll pull it from this system. It's of course you'd follow the school systems and you do what you were told, but having for me just a personal markbook that was mine and nobody else's, invaluable.
The years I struggled the most were the years where I didn't do that initial planning. I got the sheets from my Pigeonhole and I thought, yeah, that'll be fine. I'll set my markbook up at some point. I'm a bit busy answering all my emails and doing other bits and pieces. I'll leave it. I can do it later. And of course, later didn't come until I'd started collecting work in, and I had to mark it, and I had somewhere that I needed to record it, and I was just chasing my tail, and I just found that the earlier that I had the right data in the right personal system meant I was just so much more organized, and I just felt so much more relaxed. And this is the point we're trying to make, I think, through this video, is that anxiousness and that stress, it won't go away completely, but it can be relieved, as I said, through the itching cream, by making sure that you've got these systems in place. But email, Craig, email in schools.
Oh God! Well, I was going to ask you a question, and so having brought up email, that works really well. I was going to say we alluded to PPA time, and obviously ECTs, having I think increased PPA time. Well, they certainly when I taught an extra 10% during that first year, but I was going to say, do you have any advice for any do's or don'ts for new teachers about how to use your PPA time? But you've beautifully set me up because you've just said email. Oh, so I get the biggest don't is please do not let replying and writing emails dominate all of that PPA time you've got. We don't have enough PPA time as it is, but it is what it is. Everyone has to be taught and schools are strapped for money. But it's very easy, isn't it, to get into that loop. Of course you need to look at your emails, but I would be very careful about letting that time be dominated just by answering emails. I actually remember my line manager in my last few years, I'd be like, oh, you've not seen that email, and this was deputy head, this is not the one I've talked about previously. He would say, I don't look at my emails after 9 o'clock when the school day starts. I said, really? And this was a deputy head. He's like, yes, because all I'm doing is replying to emails all line. I get in the morning and I look at my emails and I deal with them all, and then I've got a day of things I need to be doing, and things will be thrown at me, and lessons I'm still teaching. And at the end of the day, I look at all the emails that come and I respond, because we were spending all day. And I thought, wow, that's a deputy head. He's got everything locked in. But it makes you realize everyone's the same, spending all days looking at emails. Yeah. Yeah.
Being
I mean, did you find that trap as well?
disciplined. Yeah, well, being disciplined, I
Mm.
found really hard, because I just find it too easy to get back to my desk, open my email. Oh, someone's emailed me. I'll give them a quick reply. Well, anyone that knows Dave knows that he doesn't do quick um, replies for anything. He does long, extended explanations. And so a single email would take me 15 minutes to write and then redraft and reword slightly. And oh, that was a bit pokey. Let's change the language on that a little bit. And I would find all my time dominated by
Um,
admin, for want of a better word. And I can't, you taught me this and you do this at Craig and Dave. And
oh,
it does frustrate me a little bit occasionally, because
oh,
I'm still the same. We've got a ticket system, and teachers contact us and they want questions answered about various things. And I'm not very good at leaving that alone.
yeah,
I'll have it on one of my screens almost permanently, and when something comes in, I'll want to reply to it. And it means that by the end of the day, all I've really done is answered a load of emails and shuffled a few things around on my desk. And when you say, so what have you achieved today? I'm like, not much. And I say, well, what have you achieved today? And you're like, well, I've planned, 3 lessons in a scheme of learning. I'll be like, ooh, how's he managed to do that? And he's managed to do that because you're disciplined. You only look at systems when you've got the time you've allocated to look at those systems.
yeah,
And in school, I used to get in an hour early before the bell went, and then the first thing I would do is make sure I've got everything set up for my lessons. There's no problems going to derail that during the day. Then I would answer my emails, and I will have done all my admin before I had to go to my tutor group. But this is the critical bit. I would then, every time I returned to my desk, I would look at my email and my other bits and pieces, whereas actually there's
yeah.
no requirement for you to do that. Answer them at the beginning and the end of the day.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. It can be so tricky as
Mm.
well. That PPA time there is designed for you to. I mean, sometimes, and I'm not gonna lie, sometimes you just need a break. Don't feel bad on a PPA time occasion saying, "I'm just going to take 15 minutes of this PPA just to have a coffee and just sit there and relax for a second."
And
Right.
answer your emails.
Yeah, no, because that's not relaxing at all. I can tell you. Don't do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's not relaxing whatsoever. And then use it to generally plan for the next lesson or do some
Mm.
prep. Maybe you just keep. You know what? I've got 40 minutes now. It's quite quiet. No one else is here. I'm actually going to get a head start on this. Not going to get it all done, but I'm going to mark some of these, key stage 3 homeworks
Yeah.
here, or then just open that calendar again and then go, oh, I'll plan for a couple of weeks ahead. Use it on stuff which benefits and accelerates you and makes the job easier, takes from
Yeah.
that burden. Because the thing with teaching is it's relentless.
Yeah.
It moves constantly. Every time the bell goes, there's a new class, then it's a new week, and then it's repeat, and there's a turn, there's a data drop, then another data drop, then a parents' evening, and it goes on, and then the year repeats year after year. And you can't stop it. You can't stop it. These things will arrive. So keeping on top of them, and just helping manage that, I think is so important. I
Mm.
put an awful lot of self-discipline systems in place for me, which became second nature. So I probably didn't even realize how much I was doing it, just to manage that. And even that, as I said, overtook me by the end. I think another really a key bit, because there's so many, Dave, but really I just want to pick on one or two. We've talked about we talked about the personal sort of mark book and having a system, but I think we've touched on it, routines, and especially for new teachers starting, establish your routines early, establish your routines from day one, and don't give up. Be relentless with those routines. Now, you know exactly what I mean by that, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we keep, if you're listening to this and thinking, Craig and Dave keep saying the same thing on these podcasts, they keep talking about routines all the time. it's really, really important. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
I mean, so I mean, if I'm saying routines, what am I? You know, relentless establishing routines. What are we talking about? I mean, there's all sorts of things, but I'm saying you're going to have school routines and stuff that are set to you by SLT or maybe your head of department. But I'm talking about the process for the start and end of lessons. You know, having seating plans. I'd have seating plans with photographs on them so I could get to know them. Things
Mm.
like that, entry routines to your classroom. And if they don't work at first, don't abandon them. Be persistent, because it's the continuity that students start to respect and appreciate. Don't expect them to do something the way you want them to just because you've told them on the first day that that's it, because they'll forget. And certain students want to push back and find your boundaries. But the more consistent you are, the more regularly you do it, the more you'll find students capitulate. And it's like, because they like the continuity, they like the consistency, they will know what to expect. And you'll find then everything else becomes easier. So, everything from entry routines to exit routines, you know, checking equipment, uniform, seating plans, your expectations for homework, your expectations in the classroom, just be consistent, be relentless. It will help so much with all the little stuff,
Yeah,
you know, least of which being classroom behavior. You know, it helps so much, and then everything else becomes easier.
yeah.
The things you want to be easier, the learning, the teaching, them taking it on board, all the things you want to happen become easier. If you don't crack those basics and stick with them like a broken record, then the rest becomes so much harder. I guess that's a key message I don't want to give.
Yeah, and in a previous episode, we talked about superpowers, and I said, one of my superpowers in the early stages of my career was just getting the basics absolutely right. And it was about those clear, consistent routines on
Mm,
entry, on exit, equipment expectations, seating plans, homework, and all the rest of it. By the way, talking about homework,
mm,
if you have got a weird homework carousel and it's not like
huh,
set homework every week or whatever it is, especially at key stage 3, sometimes it can be a bit weird in schools, how and when you should be setting homework. Make sure that's in your planner and diary as well, because that'll catch you out.
oh, oh yes.
But I think this is, you didn't mention it when we talked about superpowers, Craig, but
Go
if
on.
you were to ask me about one of your superpowers in teaching, I
Oh,
think it is the relentless consistency. Now, I was a little
yeah.
bit guilty from time to time of letting things go, particularly with those students that I had built up really good relationships with. And it's like, oh, you haven't done your homework. Oh, don't worry about it. Let's hand it in next week. Or, oh, you're not sat in the seat where I want you to sit on the seating plan, but
Uh,
don't worry, it's fine. I'm happy for you to be there. And my boundaries would slip,
yeah.
which you might be thinking, hang on a minute, didn't he say his superpower was getting all the basics right? Yes, in my early career.
Yeah.
But as I said, in my later career, my superpower was to become really reflective and become a real problem solver in my classroom. But I created my own problems sometimes in my later career because I got too complacent. And I think your superpower partly was maintaining that consistency all the way through your career, to the point where when we got to a stage late in our career where we were teaching the same classes. You were teaching one aspect, I was teaching another, and they would know they could get away with something with me and not with you. And but they didn't respect or dislike you any more than me. It's just
Yeah.
they got away with more. And I
Yeah.
used to kind of look at those students and think, Craig doesn't let you get away with that, but I kind of feel like I have to. You were really good at not favouring anybody, no
Yeah.
matter what the
And I do.
relationship was.
Yeah, you're right. And I do remember some of my A-level students joking, like, he says, you always get my SLRs. If you know Craig and Dave, you know what they are at A-level, but homework, basically, A-level homework. You always get your SLRs in. You always get them in. I remember commenting, and one of the kids just being really honest went, yeah, because you're like a dog with a bone. So we get yours done first. And I went, is it that easy? What do you mean? He said, yeah, well, other teachers don't bother us as much. So we get yours done first. And I was like, huh, huh,
Yeah. I've
oh,
got
yeah,
I've
yeah, yeah.
got I've got a little quote that I want to sort of
Go on.
finish off on, and then perhaps we
Sure.
should talk a little bit more about marking, because that
Yeah.
can be a real burden and a drain, and you need to
Mm.
get that right in the early weeks for sure. So the quote is: "Consistency beats creativity in the opening weeks."
Oh,
I think that's golden advice.
yeah.
It doesn't matter how creative your lessons are. In fact, you can afford to make them very formulaic, very boring, very consistent, because that consistency in the early weeks is going to pay dividends and allow
Yeah.
you to then open up and be more creative later. Anyway,
No, I totally
marking.
agree.
Here's my first bit of advice about
Mm.
marking, slightly controversial, and
Go
then you
on.
can sort of elaborate a little bit on it. So, slightly controversial. Do the bare minimum. Okay, I want you to look at your school systems and the expectations on marking, and I want you to do the minimum. Whatever
Yeah.
you can get away with according to your school policies, that's what I want you to do, because marking will become so burdensome. And do you know what? The
Mm.
students don't really read it, they don't really take it on board, they're not really that interested. Now, I'm not saying you don't assess and you don't give feedback, don't misconstrue what I'm saying. But I
Yeah.
think the power of oral feedback and having those one to one conversations with students is infinitely better than you writing something down for them. And I
Yeah.
just think that you should do the minimum amount of the stuff that takes you the most amount of time.
100%, especially for our subject. It all may be very well for English. You've got 5 lessons a week, and one of them is dedicated dirt time, a whole lesson dedicated on reflection. That's great. I have 1 lesson a week, or I'm on a carousel with DT in some schools. So what? You'll be expected to mark every single bit of Key Stage 3 work in there. I want to see their exercises books being marked. What, as well as their homework, times 30 kids, times 7 classes? Just get a grip, SLT. Sorry, I'm being far more controversial than you. You do that, you will burn out so quickly, and the kids will have no. Do you think your kids are going to go back through the exercise book and go, oh, look, they wrote a really nice comment on that little exercise I did in class 3 weeks ago. I better read it. Oh, and they've got some improvements. I'll tell you what, I'll go and do. No,
Mm,
it's nonsense. It's nonsense.
mm,
Now, we're not telling you not to do your school systems. You have policies, you have practices, you have procedures. You've got to suck it up and you've got to deal with it. But I am backing you 100%. You put the marking where it is required and the minimum. You're going to
mm,
get to a point where there are planned assessments, there are data drops, you're going to want some specific data. Then there's going to become coursework and elements that do need marking for assessment, and obviously you'll mark those. But pointless marking for marking's sake, if a student is never going to A, read it, and B, have time where they can act on it and reflect on your marking, then what was the point? Now,
mm,
luckily, there's a lot of schools and teachers and indeed SLT that are starting to realise this as well. The teacher workload and the balance of marking is not a new concern, and quite luckily there are a lot of schools that realise this. But yeah, it will build up quickly. So giving that feedback in an oral form, having whole class discussions, having one-on-one feedback, only doing the marking you absolutely have to do. I just think that's about protecting your sanity. Otherwise, it will become a flood. What am I being too controversial?
No, not at all. We
I'm
are
being
on
really honest.
exactly the same pages. There is a second caveat, though. I mean, the first being the school systems and expectations, and making sure that you do meet what your leaders
Yeah,
are asking of you, and hopefully that is realistic, and they
reasonable.
understand the pressures that you're under. But the second caveat is that students, they will become demotivated and they will start putting in less effort into their work if they start to think that it doesn't
Yeah,
matter to you. So there's a
yeah,
slight caveat here that
sure.
if you never acknowledge what they've produced, or you do it, very sporadically because you're taking our advice, then your students might disengage, they might produce lower quality work, etc. So it's important to acknowledge what the students are doing. It's how you do it. And as I've said,
Yeah.
as they're working, you can go round and you can say, by the way, the piece of work you did last week, I thought that was really impressive. I haven't written that down. I don't think I need to. I wanted to praise you in person. That is really, really powerful. Or if you're the kind of teacher that's got books of stickers, and you like to peel off a sticker and stick it in whatever they've got, and it says great work or well done or keep it up, these banks of stickers that you can buy. That's fantastic. We're talking about acknowledging what the students have done. That's really important, but
Yeah.
marking is not important.
Yeah. I think we can sum this up really well, can't we? The goal is not to mark more, it's to mark smart, mark strategically. Do it where it's most needed, do it where you have to do
Yeah.
it. But give that feedback in forms which are
And
more suited.
don't see every single piece of work as being on a
Oh,
par. Some
yeah.
work is more important than others, and treat
Yeah.
it like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. We thought this might be a shorter episode. Who are we kidding? Already at 41 minutes. I mean, there's probably loads of others. Are there any other? I think I've got the main ones across. I was going to talk about protecting that PPA time, but I think we've kind of already really touched on that earlier when we were talking about ECTs and not spending it all doing emails. But are there any other pearls of wisdom you want to drop out there for that nervous teacher, either returning or ECT or new teacher coming in, or is that enough for today?
I would just say, look, you survived last year, so you'll survive this year. It's
Yeah.
right and proper that you feel a little bit anxious and nervous, because it does mean that you care. It means that you want to do a good job. You don't want to be completely blasé and complacent, because that's not going to win you promotions. It's not going to win you the respect of your students. It's not going to win you the respect and relationship with your colleagues. So I think if you are looking at September the 1st, or whenever your first day is, and you're thinking, I really don't want to go back to school, that's normal. That's a perfectly normal human emotion. But be prepared. The old Scout motto, be prepared, and it will just make it a lot easier.
Marvelous. Well, look, thank you very much for anyone who is watching and listening again. I hope that's made you feel a bit better about the next academic year, but we will be here with you throughout the academic year. So we'll see you again soon. Take care for now. Bye-bye.